Between August 2020 and August 2023, there have been coup attempts in 8 countries in Africa, Gabon being the latest. 7 of these have resulted in regime changes, and we are still waiting to see what will happen in Sudan. In many of these countries, majority of the civilian population seem to be in support of the coup. This is due to failure by the ousted governments to resolve critical issues such as security concerns, poverty and unemployment, corruption, as well as foreign exploitation. Reason number 1 that has been cited for many of these coups is economic and political imperialism by countries from the West. By the beginning of the 20th century, almost all of Africa was under European colonial rule. Colonization meant that a large chunk of resources mined and produced in Africa belonged to and were used to enrich these European colonial masters. By the end of the century, many African countries had successfully taken back their countries from colonialists and were now in total control of their own resources and destinies. Not quite. The truth is that European nations stuck around. The French, for example, continued to exploit resources from their former colonies. This was done through entering into agreements and contracts that grossly benefited the French over the Africans. When Oxfam did a review of the French mining company Arriva in Niger, they found out that Arriva had been mining Nigerian uranium for 50 years, accounting for nearly 40% of its global supply. Yet they were enjoying exemptions from duties, VAT, and fuel taxes, which they use in massive amounts. There was a provision in the contract which enabled them to set aside 20% of their profits from being taxed. In 2010, Arriva extracted uranium worth 2.3 trillion CFA francs or 3.5 million euros, and Niger only got to enjoy 13% of the exported value of that uranium. That means they were given only 459 million euros for all that uranium mined. Niger is one of the poorest countries, and in fact, Anne-Sophie, who works with Oxfam, said this, that it is incomprehensible for Niger, the world's 4th largest uranium producer and a strategic supplier for Arriva and France, not taking advantage of the revenue from its extraction and remains one of the poorest countries on the planet. Ali Idrissa from Rotab said, in France, 1 of every 3 light bulbs is lit thanks to Nigerian uranium. In Niger, nearly 90% of the population has no access to electricity. African countries should be able to count on fair revenues from French companies extracting their resources. And Niger is not the only victim of such grossly unfair agreements. In Gabon, the French oil mining company was exploiting the country for unreasonably low prices of oil, and in return, they were not actually benefiting the country, but in return, the person they were benefiting was the former president, Omar Bongo. To be clear, it's not only the French who are involved in this kind of exploitative and ridiculous trade agreements. The Americans are here, the Chinese, the Russians. All of these people are here. And let me digress just for a moment. I do not understand this absurd lie going around Africa that Russia is here to liberate us from the West. What is this white savior complex that we have as a people? Why do we need Russia to save us? Save us from what? These are people who are fighting their own war. They are not here to save us. They are here to fund their wars. They are here, for example, after helping Mali to overturn their government. Next thing you know, they are the ones mining the gold in Mali. So anyway, I digress. Let's go back. One might wonder how African countries get themselves into such one-sided agreements. Is it that our leaders simply cannot read? Is it that they are being threatened with death or torture of their family members? Like, who is negotiating these agreements on behalf of Africa? Which leads us to our second problem. Gone are the days when leaders needed to be tortured and threatened before they betrayed their countries. Today, they simply sell their country for money and power to the detriment of their own people. Many African leaders are like the old monarchs. They are more concerned with keeping power than they are with actually doing anything with that power. In Gabon, the French helped Omar Bongo to hold on to power for a whopping 42 years. In return, he allowed them to fleece his country's oil. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement between French and Bongo. And the citizens of Gabon were not benefited by that agreement. It was about the French and it was about Bongo. He used the state oil money to buy off majority of those who opposed his rule. In Mali, reliable sources have linked Russia's Wagner group to the army generals who led the coup in 2020, and shortly after that, Wagner was seen to obtain mining permits and created local gold mining companies to exploit the gold in the country. It is African leaders who are collaborating with European imperialists and China and whoever else is interested, and private companies, to completely and totally bleed this continent dry. However, bad leadership isn't even the real problem. As we have discovered with the coups in the last year, no matter how much financial, military, propaganda, and technical support you invest, you cannot impose a leader on the African people, not for very long. Either they will remove that puppet or they will frustrate him forever. Which brings me to the third and real reason why many African countries actually suffer today. We, the African people. One may wonder then, why do Africans continue to elect and condone the worst among us to lead? Even when leaders have imposed themselves on us, they often still enjoy popularity and support of a good enough size of the population. Case in point is Yoweri Museveni in Uganda and Tinubu in Nigeria. In spite of massive allegations of election malpractice, both of these men still enjoy the public support of many people, especially from their own tribe and religion. I submit to you two reasons. The first being that many Africans know very well deep down that if they were to have the same positions, they would participate in the same corrupt and greedy practices as the leaders that we have. It is in this continent where parents offer bribes for their children to be given opportunities which other children have earned by merit. It is in this continent that someone would rather prepare a bribe than follow the traffic rules because they are in a hurry. We know ourselves. Integrity is for a select few, and they rarely, if ever, get to electable position. If someone were to run for a local government seat, one person has a lot of money and pours a lot of those money, bribing the electorate. We see it as he's giving us gifts, he's generous, and we elect that person. We never ask ourselves, how did this person come about this measure of wealth? And that person's popularity will soar because of his wealth and bribing above the popularity of somebody else who has integrity. The other point is this, that sometimes, even if they do not have wealth, if they are vying against somebody who is not from our tribe or our religion or our clan, we tend to side through nepotism with whoever it is who is like us. We do not look into integrity. We do not look into merit. We Africans are the problem. We rarely hold ourselves responsible for the rampant local corruption and sabotage of public systems. How many times have you been standing in line when somebody just skipped you because they know someone or because they bribed someone? We are the ones who are the public workers earning salaries but still asking for bribes before giving basic rights and public services to the people. We are the ones using government vehicles for personal business and stealing medicine from hospitals to resell in our drugstores and chemists. Our governments can barely fight corruption because they themselves are corrupt and we ourselves are corrupt. The vast majority of the population in African countries participate in corruption at the local level and at the high level. You will be hard-pressed to find an African who has never bribed, has never asked for or taken a bribe, or who has never reaped the advantages of nepotism. So yes, Africa has a poor leadership problem, and the West is exploiting this poor leadership problem. But that problem is because we have a societal integrity issue. Our leaders simply reflect the vast majority of our populations. I was very impressed by the Nigerian 2023 elections. One of the candidates' major campaigning point was his track record of integrity in public office. I was pleasantly surprised that this resonated with at least 25% of the Nigerian electorate, mainly the young people. This is a sign that Africans are beginning to actually consider integrity as a qualification for electability. I am totally convinced that if Africans can take responsibility for our own issues, we can turn this ship around. If we are the problem, then we are also the solution. If you are an African and you have stayed this long, I want you to know that you can make a difference. Stop pointing dirty fingers at the elite for the same things you engage in on a small scale. Be the change you want to see. Change, have integrity, and then influence your circles to have integrity. Talk about individual and personal integrity to anyone who will listen to you, especially the youth. So, thank you for watching to the very end. If you made it this far, just tell me in the comment sections. And if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover next, just tell me in the comment section again. And pray for me. Pray for me. This cold has really dealt with me. So thank you. Bye. Have a great day and may God prosper Africa. The end.